Not Just Mom. Chapter 1. The Breaking Point. I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who cried over a pile of dishes. But there I was, forehead resting on the sticky countertop, breathing in the scent of day-old spaghetti and lemon-scented cleaner, trying not to let the tears actually fall. Behind me, someone was playing the recorder. Poorly. And I was pretty sure the dog had just peed on the couch. Again! My name's Courtney. I'm 42, a homeschooling mom of 6, and for the last 20 years, I've worn motherhood like a badge of honor. If this story is already tugging at something in you, hit that subscribe button. We share real, raw, and inspiring stories every week, the kind that stay with you long after the video ends. So if you're into heartfelt journeys and gentle breakthroughs, you're in the right place. I've breastfed in ball fields, taught phonics while flipping pancakes, and explained algebra while unclogging toilets. And I'd do it all over again. I love my life. But lately, I felt like I'm running a marathon in flip-flops, holding everyone's water bottles but never taking a sip myself. The breaking point came on Tuesday. My oldest, Jess, had just landed another freelance video editing gig. $300 for just 2 hours of work. It's not even hard, she said, shrugging like money just fell out of the sky. I smiled, told her I was proud, and then went to the laundry room and just stood there, looking at socks, realizing I hadn't earned $300 in months, maybe years. That night, while the kids were winding down with the show, I curled up next to my husband on the couch, his arm draped around me, solid and warm. He's a good man, works long hours, never complains, loves us fiercely. And he glanced over at me with those steady brown eyes, and I just said it. I think I need to make some money. He raised an eyebrow. Yeah? Yeah, I said, but not a normal job. I can't do 9 to 5. Heck, I can barely do 9 to noon some days. He chuckled, rubbing my arm. So what are you thinking? And that's the thing. I wasn't thinking. I didn't know yet. I just knew that I wanted to surprise the family with a vacation. One where we wouldn't just toss snacks in the van and drive to grandma's. I wanted plane tickets. I wanted room service. I wanted to show my kids something outside the radius of our zip code. But mostly, I wanted to prove to myself that I was capable of being something besides the glue holding this house together. Not that that's a bad thing. But I leaned into his chest and I whispered, I just don't want to overwhelm myself in this. He kissed the top of my head and said the most beautiful words I'd heard all day. We'll figure it out, babe. You don't have to carry this alone. And just like that, something cracked open inside of me. It was equal parts fear and freedom. I didn't know what was coming next, but for the first time in a long time, I let myself hope that it could be good. Chapter 2, The Dream and the Dog Hair. The idea came to me while I was brushing Biscuit, our matted little mutt who thinks he's a king. I was crouched on the back deck, trying to detangle what looked like a squirrel's nest from behind his ear when it hit me. People pay good money for this. I used to groom dogs in college back when I worked weekends at the vet clinic. I was good at it too. Gentle with the anxious ones, fast with the big ones, and always sent them home looking like show dogs, even if they were mostly couch potatoes. I liked it. It was quiet, no spelling tests or peanut butter stuck to the ceiling. The more I thought about it, the more it made sense. Mobile dog grooming, low overhead, flexible hours, decent rates, and best of all, I could choose when and how much I worked. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop and a notebook. I wrote out her name, Courtney's Canines. It sounded cheesy. I scratched it out and tried Primp and Pup. Better. I watched YouTube videos about mobile grooming setups, read reviews on portable tubs, and even priced used vans. It felt like dreaming again, and I didn't realize how much I'd missed that. I started small, just friends and neighbors. My first client was a golden doodle named Muffin. The owners were thrilled I could come to them, and I made $85 in an hour. $85. I drove home with wet hair and dog fur stuck to my pants, grinning like a teenager with a fresh tip. But by the second week, the magic wore off a bit. I'd only committed to 1 full day and 2 morning slots a week, but suddenly the house looked like a tornado had passed through. The kids whined about cereal for lunch. My 13-year-old asked me where her favorite jeans were, and I hadn't done laundry in 3 days. I came home to dishes crusted over, a toddler who had finger painted the wall with yogurt, and a vague feeling that I was somehow selfish. The guilt came creeping in like fog. You're always gone now, my 10-year-old said when I picked him up from soccer. I wasn't gone always, but I wasn't always there either. And that had been my thing. I was their mom. I was their mom, the one who packed snacks and Band-Aids and the backup plans. And now I was the mom with damp shoes and hair that smelled faintly like a wet schnauzer. That night, I collapsed onto the couch and scrolled my phone in silence while the kids watched a movie. I don't know what I searched originally. Something desperate like mom guilt, business ideas, or how to make money without ruining your family. And somehow in that haze, a video popped up. It was a channel called Her Story, Her Journey. The thumbnail was a woman holding a coffee mug and laughing, and the title read, How One Mom Stopped Apologizing for Having Dreams. I clicked. I listened. I cried. Then I listened to another and another, because somehow in these fictional stories, these made-up lives of other women, I heard my own voice whispering back, You're not a bad mom. You're just a woman with a dream. Chapter 3, Her Story, Her Journey. I didn't plan to binge watch anything that night. I was just tired. Tired in that bone-deep way that has nothing to do with sleep and everything to do with holding too much for too long. But those stories on Her Story, Her Journey, they pulled me in like a warm bath I didn't know I needed. The one that hooked me was about a woman named Mariah, a restaurant owner in Montana who hated social media. Same, I whispered, laughing through my tears. But by the end of the episode, she'd grown a full wait list from a single video of her cooking breakfast burritos. And more than that, she liked who she'd became in the process. The next one was about a woman on a sailboat with 3 kids, figuring out how to charge for the creative work she loved. It felt like someone had climbed into my head and pulled out all this messy, beautiful, complicated thoughts I didn't have words for. I sat there long after the house had gone quiet, curled up in a blanket with my earbuds in, listening to fictional women find their footing. They weren't perfect. They weren't polished. But they were trying. And that gave me permission to try too. Somewhere around midnight, I opened a fresh page in my notebook and wrote at the top, My life is allowed to be mine. It felt bold, maybe even rebellious. But the truth was, I'd been living like my life was a group project, constantly checking in to make sure everyone else was okay before I ever considered my own needs. And you know what? That's not what I wanted to model for my daughters or my sons. I didn't want them growing up thinking that mommies don't get dreams or breaks or time alone in the van with the windows down and a beagle's head sticking out the side. I started jotting down what I wanted, not just for the business, but for our life. A chore chart that didn't fall apart in 2 days. A meal plan that didn't depend on me remembering to thaw chicken. 1 deep clean day a week. Outsourced, even if it meant paying one of the kids. Time with my husband that wasn't just collapsing in bed and comparing calendars or scrolling TikTok. It wasn't that I needed less family. I needed more Courtney. The next morning, I brought my notebook to breakfast and read the list to my husband while he sipped coffee and tried to keep the toddler from pouring syrup into the cat bowl. He looked up at me, smiled slowly, and said, I'm in. Just like that. And I realized I wasn't going to have to do this alone. That was the night I stopped scrolling in secret and started sharing. The kids heard those audiobooks while I packed lunchboxes or folded towels. Sometimes they sat beside me and listened too, even laughed together, like when the mom in the story gave herself a timeout in the pantry with Oreos and no regrets. I didn't know if the stories were written for me, but I knew they were saving me, 1 chapter at a time. Still with us? This is the kind of story we share every week. Hit subscribe to follow along. Chapter 4, The Shift at Home. The first time I said the word system, my 14-year-old groaned so loudly you'd think I said we were moving to Antarctica. A system? Mom, like a chore wheel? That sounds awful. Exactly, I said. That's why we're not doing a wheel. We're doing a chart. A beautiful, laminated, color-coded chart. Because while I was falling in love with my business, I was also falling behind. And if I was going to keep grooming dogs without losing my mind, I needed structure. Not a rigid schedule, just rhythm, predictability, peace. I sat the kids down one afternoon with a bowl of popcorn and said, Okay, team, I need your help. That got their attention, calling them a team. I'd learned that from one of the moms in the audiobooks. I was honest. I love being home with you guys. I'm not going anywhere. But I also love this new work I'm doing. It helps us save up for things like maybe a surprise trip one day. That perked a few ears. But I can't do it all, so we need to shift how we do things here. We brainstormed together. Who liked laundry? Silence. Who hated dishes the least? 2 hands. Who could take over snack prep for the littles? My 9-year-old beamed with pride. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. We made assignments, posted them on the fridge. I offered a few small job bonuses for extra effort, and we hired our 16-year-old, yep, the one who inspired this whole thing, to deep clean once a week. She was thrilled. I was relieved. Even my husband got in on it. One night, I found him reorganizing the pantry. I blinked at him like I was seeing Bigfoot. What are you doing? He shrugged. Helping you have a weekend off someday. I nearly cried into the bag of rice. We started meal planning on Sundays. The kids each picked a dinner. They were kind of weird combos, mac and cheese and hot dogs and pickles, but I didn't care. It meant I wasn't cooking every night, and that was gold. The house didn't magically stay clean. People still lost shoes and spilled juice and argued over who got to sit in the front seat. But the difference was I wasn't carrying it all alone anymore, and that made everything feel lighter. One morning, after finishing up a golden retriever named Maple, I sat in my van, sun streaming through the window, and opened my notebook again. I wrote, I'm not just a mom. I'm not just tired. I'm becoming something new. And the best part, my kids were watching. Chapter 5, Flourish. Something shifted the day I realized I didn't dread the work. I craved it. I'd load up my van with my folding grooming table, a little speaker, my coffee in a travel mug, and drive across Franklin with the windows down, dog hair still clinging to my apron from the day before. And I felt light, like I was slipping into a different version of myself, one that still smelled vaguely like lavender shampoo and wet Labrador, but who also remembered what it felt like to breathe. I started calling it my sanity time. No one asked me what mitochondria do. No toddler melting down because their sock felt weird. Just me, a golden retriever named Hank, and a podcast that made me laugh so hard I snorted mid-nail trim. Tips started rolling in. Some days it was $20, other times 40. One sweet client handed me an envelope after a long grooming session with her 3 rescue mutts. Inside was $100 and a note that said, for showing up with kindness when they were scared. You have a gift. I cried in my van again, but this time it wasn't exhaustion. It was pride. And maybe for the first time in years, I let myself own that feeling. I didn't apologize for it or brush it off. I didn't compare it to someone else's big fancy job. I just sat there and thought, I'm good at this. And it matters. At home, things were smoother. Not perfect, but smoother. The kids got used to the new routine. They even started checking the fridge for the weekly meal list and swapping chores without being asked. Okay, sometimes. My husband picked up a few extra tasks without me begging. It felt like the whole house had exhaled. And me, I started to stand a little taller. I'd groom in the mornings with an audiobook from her story, her journey, playing in one ear. Those stories had become my quiet mentors. Women rising from burnout, women letting go of guilt, women choosing themselves and watching their families flourish in the ripple effect. That's what was happening. The more I showed up for me, the more present and peaceful I became for them. One day, in between brushing out a poodle's curly coat and trimming a matted Shih Tzu, I found myself humming, just humming. No stress, no mental checklist, just joy. I hadn't realized how long it'd been since I felt like that. Joy that wasn't earned by exhaustion, joy that didn't require permission, joy that came from doing something I loved and getting paid for it. Imagine that. Chapter 6. The surprise. I'd been tucking bills into a plain white envelope for weeks. At first, it was just tips, crisp 20s folded in half and slipped in without ceremony. Then it was a full payment from a regular Saturday client. Then another. I didn't count it often. I wanted it to grow in secret, like a tiny garden that I'd planted just for us. By the time I looked again, it was enough. One Thursday night, after the dishes were done and the little ones were building couch forts with their older siblings, I sat my husband down at the kitchen table. I slid the envelope toward him and said, "Open it." He raised an eyebrow, but didn't ask questions. Just peeled back the flap and started counting. I watched his face shift, from curiosity to surprise to something deeper. Gratitude, maybe? Or awe? Court, he said slowly. Is this? Plane tickets, I said, grinning so wide my cheeks hurt. For all of us, to New York City. The kids heard the words before I finished the sentence. Suddenly, the couch fort erupted. Wait, what? We're flying? We're going to see Broadway? Can I bring my stuffed llama? The kitchen filled with shrieks and laughter and a dozen questions. And in the middle of it all, I stood with my hands over my heart, letting the moments wash over me. This wasn't just about a vacation. This is about what it meant. I had made space for myself, carved it out of the chaos of motherhood, and filled it in with something that lit me up. And somehow, instead of the world falling apart, it had fallen into place. Later that night, when the house was quiet again, I stood at the window with a mug of tea and thought back to that moment in the laundry room months ago. The shame, the fear, the not enoughness that had wrapped around me like a heavy coat. And I whispered to that old version of myself, thank you for not giving up. She hadn't known this was coming, this wild, wonderful chapter where dog hair and dreams mingled in a minivan, where fictional stories led to real-life healing, where asking for help led to a home that hummed instead of groaned, where mom was still my favorite title, but no longer my only one. If this story spoke to you, there's more where that came from. Go ahead and hit subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter in this journey, or the next story that just might be yours in disguise. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.